Good morning and welcome to Screen Reflections. This is your host, Michael Bergeron. Today we've got a great show for you. We're going to feature a archival interview with Rob Reiner. Stay tuned.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played
songs that made the hit parade.
Guys like me, we had it made. Those were the days. Didn't need no welfare state.
Everybody pulled his weight.
G.R.O. LaSalle ran great. Those were the days.
And you knew where you were.
Girls were girls and men were men. Mister, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again. People seem to be content. $50 paid the rent. Freaks were in a circus tent. Those were the days.
Take a little Sunday spin.
Gotta watch the Dodgers win.
Have yourself a dandy day
That cost you under a fin.
Hair was short and skirts were long. Kate Smith really sold a song.
I don't know just what went wrong. Those were the days.
Tell me, okay.
All right, all of you, drum me up.
Films, most recently the Pablo Larraín film, Jackie, and All the Way, the HBO film, or the Butler. Liev Schreiber kind of plays him, like he's giving orders from on the toilet and stuff. What was your take on LBJ?
Well, what we tried to do was to really show how complex a person he was. People have a certain image of him as being a tough negotiator and an arm twister and larger-than-life kind of guy who, bosses people around and all that. But the truth of it is, he was those things, but he was also incredibly insecure. And there was a book I read in preparation for this, and I read, the Carroll book, which, certainly is the definitive, works on LBJ, but the book I read by Doris Kearns Goodwin really gave me some insight into his, the inner workings of his, emotional makeup. And he, two things that came out in that for me was, one, he apparently had this recurring dream where he was paralyzed. And you see that play out in, his initial sometimes inability to make decisions and to agonize over the right thing to do. Eventually, when he comes around to making the decisions, he's, full steam ahead, and all of those, aggressive skills that he possesses come into play. But prior to that, there's a real insecurity and a fear of not being loved. And the other thing that I took from the book was that he had this very complex relationship with his mother. He was, she loved him, he loved her, he idolized her, but there were times when she withheld her love for him because she didn't approve of certain things he was doing. And so he always had in the back of his head, in the back of his mind, what, whether or not people were going to love him or like him or vote for him or support him. And that those things came out in his inability to pull the trigger early on to run for president in 1960. And he eventually did and, went up against Kennedy and lost. But we see this playing out. And what I wanted to do with the film was to give an overall picture of Lyndon Johnson, not just to show the, what we see as a two-dimensional, sometimes a cartoon kind of look at him. He did have, these kind of boorish and crass ways, and we have those things in as well, but he also had this incredibly, like I say, insecure, sensitive side to him. And the thing that was most, exciting for me is that we screened this film at the LBJ Library, in Austin. And Lucy Baines was there. And after we finished the screening, we had a Q&A. Woody Harrelson, myself, the guy who his museum there. And before she asked the question, I said, I just want to hear what Lucy has to say. I don't really, that's the only thing I care about is how did she react to this film. And she stood up. I don't know if you know her at all, but she's very formal. And she stood up and said, the man I saw on the screen tonight was the man I knew. And I thought, wow, that's, to me, we achieved what we set out to do, was try to give a full picture of Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, that's high praise indeed. How much of his life does your film cover? It's not just like 1 year. It's like a all-encompassing.
No, it's a very, oddly enough, it's a very small sliver of his life. I mean, what we decided to do was to take the time from the assassination until he delivers the famous address to the joint session of Congress on wanting to pass the Civil Rights Act, and basically that takes place in less than 2 weeks. It's like a little over a week period when that happened. Now we do have flashbacks to the time he was majority leader of the Senate, and we show that, and we have flashbacks to when he was considering running for president. But basically, it all focuses on the time in which he was riding in that motorcade, and then ultimately had to assume the presidency. And we tried to focus on what went through him in having to assume that, as he describes, the awesome burden of becoming president. So we tried to, it's fairly limited in that way. Now, like I said, we do flashback a number of times, but it's basically focused on that very small window of his life. And I think we're able to, by doing that, hopefully show all the sides of him.
And the film production also shot in Dealey Plaza?
Yes, we shot the assassination sequence in Dealey Plaza, and we tried to recreate as best we could. I think we kept very close to what happened. As a matter of fact, one of the cameras that I used in shooting it, we had like about 4 different cameras, I think, and one of them, I actually dressed a guy up to look like Abraham Zapruder, and I put him exactly where he was, and I gave him, he's in the distance so you can't really see what kind of camera he has, but I gave him one of the cameras, and some of the sequence that you see is mirrors, Kennedy's car, that, remember, he comes out from behind the sign, the street sign, and you see him get hit for the first time. So we tried to recreate that as best we could.
Yeah.
That was a surreal experience, I gotta say. Recreating that was a very strange experience.
Well, and also that you got to figure from a filmmaking point of view, that scene has been shot so many times there in Dealey Plaza. Again, most recently, the movie Jackie, or
right.
When Oliver Stone did it, 20 some years ago. Is there an infrastructure in Dallas of people who have already worked on this scene and who can just bring it to you instantly like that?
Well, the difference on this one is that we were more or less trying to do it from Johnson's point of view. In other words, it was more focused on Johnson's reaction because the film was about Johnson and what he experienced, which is, he didn't see much because after the first shot rang out, his Secret Service guy, Youngblood, just jumped on top of him and pushed him down to the floorboard of the limo that they were in. So but we do show, obviously aspects of the assassination, and there is, there's so much footage. I mean, so much archival stuff that you can look at, and there are so many people that are expert on, where the cars were, where the, what they call the Queen Mary, which was the Secret Service car behind them, and we pretty much, recreated it as it was. There were people that, when we were shooting it, there were people that came there who are, Kennedy assassination experts, and they said, no, the babushka lady was standing there, and the umbrella man was over there, and we positioned all those people. And you remember there was that family of four, the mother and father and the two kids that were lying on the grass, and we got those two people, and so, we try to recreate it as best we could.
And now, Joey Hartstone's script had been around for a while. It was known as like a blacklist script that had never been produced. How did you get associated with Joey?
Well, what happened was, it's through a tennis connection. One of the producers, a guy named Tim White, was playing tennis with Martin Schaefer, who was one of my partners at Castle Rock. And he said, we got this script, you should read it. He looked at it, and he gave it to one of our production, one of our executives, Liz Glotzer, and she read it, and she said, Rob, you should take a look at this. This is pretty good, and I was kind of hesitant at first because I thought, as a kid, I hated Lyndon Johnson, as a kid growing up. I was his draft age, during the 60s. So to me, Lyndon Johnson was just a guy that was overseeing a war that I thought was immoral and illegal, and he could send me to my death, So I didn't like him very much, but I read it because as I've gotten older, and I've spent a lot of time now in government and in politics and working on public policy and how it gets effectuated, I started having a different feeling about him because, he did, had it not been for the Vietnam War, he would have gone down as one of the great presidents of all time, I believe. And so when you look at his legislative accomplishments, I think it's unparalleled. I don't think anybody can, except for maybe FDR. And he was a big fan of it. He loved FDR. He came to Congress when FDR was president, and he supported everything FDR, was in favor of. And so I had a different view of it. And when I read the script, I said, okay, this certainly takes on, a different aspect of this guy's life, and it doesn't focus on the Vietnam War. We purposely, didn't focus on it because we only show him from the time, like I say, the time he gives that speech to Congress. Vietnam was not, it hadn't been escalated at that point at all, and he really didn't want to think about it too much at that point. So we just try to, I had a different view of him. I just had a very, very different view of him. And then when I started working on the script with Joey is when we decided to try to get some of these, more nuanced things in about his insecurities and get those things in because they weren't there initially. And that's when the Doris Kearns Goodwin book came in, very valuable. Was very valuable for me. And then we decided to use his relationship with Lady Bird as a way to get that in. And that was the other thing that Lucy Baines was really keen on. She said, this is the first time I've ever seen anybody capture, the way my mother and father were with each other. Nobody's ever done that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and one thing that's always gotten me, I'm like 60 years old, so I was coming of age when all the, that stuff happened. I was like in second grade when the assassination took place, but I hadn't become politicized yet. But I remember it's like all these people had distinct voices. Like Everett Dirksen had this gravelly voice. My dad used to imitate him, and was that something that you were going for in the, because it's got a large cast?
Yeah, the Everett Dirksen, we only see him for a little tiny bit because at a certain point, Johnson is trying to round up the votes for the civil rights bill, to make it law, and he goes to Dirksen because he realizes he's going to lose the Southern Democrats. I mean, which are represented by Richard Russell. He was a very, very powerful guy in the Senate at the time, and he was also very close to Johnson. He was like a mentor to Johnson in a way, and he realized that he wasn't going to get Russell or his entire caucus. So in order to pass the thing, he'd have to rely on the Republicans, and that's when he went to Dirksen. We have one little scene where he goes to Dirksen. The party of Lincoln is going to have to fire the final shot here in order to get this done. And Johnson realized, he knew that, he said it at the time, and we don't have the film, but he said at the time that, the Democrats are going to lose the South for a generation. What he didn't know is that, 50 years, they still don't have the South. So the Democrats paid a heavy price to pass civil rights and also Voting Rights Act. But, at a certain point, you do what you think is right. And I think that somebody like Johnson, who, he was a practical guy. He only did things when he thought he could win. He wasn't an ideologue or anything. But he did have those feelings inside him of having an affinity for poor people. I mean, he grew up in the West, in the West, the hill country of West Texas. And he, knew about poverty. And so many of his greatest pieces of legislation like Medicare and Medicaid and Head Start, all these things were designed to try to lift people out of poverty. And he understood that, but I don't think he ever would have pushed those things unless he thought he could get it done.
Now, you're already working on post-production on your next film, Shock and Awe, which is also written by Joey Hartstone and has some similar cast members. In fact, you and Harrelson and a couple of James Marsden and Tommy Lee Jones played the four reporters with Knight Rider, who were who were instrumental in uncovering the truth about the WMDs.
It's true. They did uncover the truth, and they were completely ignored by the mainstream media. And that's the story of the film. I mean, it's kind of a cautionary tale to say that, we really do need an independent free media to be able to get to the truth of things. Otherwise, and especially now more than ever, you've got, fake news, and you've got, foreign hostile, countries coming in and spreading fake news, and even our own media throwing fake news around. It's very hard for the public to disseminate what's real and what's not. And so here's these guys, this little kind of oasis of truth trying to push its way through. It's like the rose in Spanish Harlem trying to, push its way up through the cement. I mean, it's very hard. So that's what that film is all about. And, hopefully, at some point we'll get back to some kind of real, the real principles of journalism. It seems like we've gone so far afield, and it's scary because we're now basing elections on them, and we're also basing decisions to go to war. And I just thought that, the reason I wanted to make the film, and I've been trying to get it done for like 10 years, and I had many different versions of it. I tried different ways to do it and couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't understand how, in my lifetime, we had gone to war, two big wars that were, world-changing in a way, both based on lies. There was Vietnam and then there was Iraq. And they were both based on complete lies. And so how is this happening in our lifetime? And I just hope that, we don't have that happen again. When we see all kinds of things going on now with either North Korea or Iran, Syria, there's so many hotspots. I worry that somebody will, try to go to war on a lie. I think it's going to be tougher for Trump because he lies so much of the time that, hopefully people will take him at face value, and really start digging. Because people took Bush at face value, Even after they found, they didn't find any WMD there. The 75% of the people who believed that, somehow, Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11. I mean, it's
Right.
tough to break through with the truth. Very hard, very hard. So that's what that film is about.
No, I remember watching Colin Powell address the United Nations and thinking, this is just crazy. I mean, he's playing a cassette tape with,
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. So,
the thing that the Colin Powell thing was, that's the thing that, when he went in front of the UN, that was the thing that convinced most people that it must be true, because he had tremendous credibility, and we talk about that in the film. You'll see how we deal with it. Lawrence Wilkerson, who was Colin Powell's chief of staff, we had a small screening in D.C. recently of it, for the journalists, just because they hadn't seen it. And he was watching it, and he said, got me angry all over again, watching this thing. And General Shinseki was there, too. And, he was the other guy who got fired because he told the truth to Congress when he said that, if you want to, invade Iraq and hold Iraq, you're going to need 300,000 or 400,000 troops to do that, which is true. And he was fired over it. And when he watched the film,
lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Call my baby lollipop, tell you why. His kiss is sweeter than an apple pie. And when he does a shaky rock and dance, man, I haven't got a chance. I call him lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop. Sweeter than candy on a stick, huckleberry, cherry, or lock-on. If you had a choice, he'd be your pick, but lollipop is mine. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Crazy way it thrills me, tell you why. Just like the lightning from the sky. He loves to kiss me till I can't see straight. Gee, my lollipop is great. I call him lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, a lollipop.
And that was a cut off the Stand By Me album, the soundtrack, Rob Reiner's second film. Let's listen to a clip from All in the Family. You have to remember, All in the Family was the top-rated show of its era in the early 70s, but it would never play nowadays because it is just so profane compared to what television is now. Let's listen to this.
What's this? What kind of fish is that?
Smoked salmon.
Smoked salmon? I only get tuna fish for my lunch. Who you having here, the Duke of Windsor?
What difference would it make? Whoever it is, you're not going to like him. You don't like anything about us. You resent our attitudes, our politics, even the clothes we wear. I don't think there's one thing about us you agree with.
I agree with that. But that don't answer the question. Who's the big cheese you're having here for lunch?
Roger.
Roger the fairy? All right. Did you hear that, Edith? You know who they're bringing around here for lunch? Roger, sweetie pie Roger.
All right, would you cut it out, huh?
Who's their friend, Arch?
Listen, Edith, we run a decent home here. We don't need any strange little birdies flying in and out.
Stop that. Roger's not a strange little birdie.
His pal Roger is as queer as a $4 bill, and he knows it.
That's not only cruel, Daddy, that's an outright lie.
You know something, Archie? Just because a guy is sensitive and he's an intellectual and he wears glasses, you make him out a queer.
I never said a guy who wears glasses is a queer. A guy who wears glasses is a four-eyes. A guy who is a fag is a queer.
And again, we've been listening to some clips from Rob Reiner and films by Rob Reiner. That was a segment from All in the Family, a show that he starred in, along with Carol O'Connor in the 1970s. Thank you. You've been listening to Screen Reflections. We're going to wrap out with a couple of miscellaneous cuts from movies. And this is KPFT in Houston. This is your host, Michael Bergeron.
I can't. I'm in bed with the flu.
The flu? You didn't get a flu shot?
I wish I did. I can't believe I'm missing out on Greg's wedding.
Whoa. Grandma's about to crowd surf.
Grandma's about to what? What?
Man, I'll call you back.
Oh, man.
Sounds like another case of flu FOMO. Don't get stuck at home with the flu. A flu shot is safe, effective, and you can get it at the same time as your COVID-19 vaccine. A flu shot is the best way to prevent the flu and its potentially serious complications. It keeps you protected and also protects your loved ones. Protecting our community can't wait. So why get stuck inside with the flu? Don't get flu FOMO. Learn more at getmyflushot.org.
Brought to you by the AMA, CDC, and the Ad Council.
You wanted to be cool, which led you to smoking, which led to a pack a day. Then you met that special someone, which led to starting a life with them, which led to wanting to live longer, which led to quitting. Then you heard you may be at risk for lung cancer, which led you to getting a low-dose CT scan. If you smoked, get scanned. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
Want to do radio? KPFT is looking for programmers and board ops. If this sounds like you, contact me, Marlo Blue, at pdkpft.org.